So, do we want to speak about the format and content of the information night?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We will have to be sure that the cafeteria is available.
Okay. I will check with Mr. Benson tomorrow on
I do think it's important that we do know where we're at with negotiations for that meeting. I'm not sure if Dr. Littlefield has any information for us yet on that.
Do we want to maybe use the yellow paper up there and write down what maybe some of the things that we would like to see?
that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, no problem.
Oh.
It's fine now. It woke up. Yeah.
Seriously, right?
We're not in a rush.
You're right.
Are you sure?
All right. So, again, we talked about the fact that we want to, present
Where we're at.
some content, where we're at, and then take some questions after. So I think some of the key parts of that are, like, what are the choices and how an assignment process will work for the 8th graders. Hi, Phil. We're talking about the content and format of our information night that we are looking at having on November 25th for high school information. We have, I guess I'm just catching them up to speed, right? So
That's fine.
we had a discussion about and disagreement about what the night was supposed to look like. That led to us making a motion to not have the forum next week because folks had issues with forum versus information night. So now we have had a motion to call it an information night, and we're talking about what's going to be presented on that evening.
And changing it to November 25th.
Correct.
Is it all right if I contact Mr. Benson to find out if the 25th is available?
We didn't set a time.
Could you please fill in Dr. Littlefield about why Mr. Lestrange and I are sitting in the audience, whether we're glad to? We believe that they now...
You're not recognized by the chair right now. I will fill in the
Excuse me, I'm talking to
superintendent.
Dr. Littlefield.
You're not a school board member. You're a member of the public,
Because
Mr.
we're
Pearl.
not here
You're-
discussing the forum.
Mr. Pearl.
Thank you.
To bring you up to speed on why Mr. Lestrange and Mr. Pearl are in the audience is they think that this is an illegal meeting and they do not want to participate in an illegal meeting because of the words that were used in my email. The board has stated that they felt format, including the planning of the meeting, and Mr. Pearl and Mr. Lestrange are in objection and what the meeting of school board members are in the audience to observe.
You forgot about the fact that you no longer have a forum for the 29th, which was also stated in that same notice. There is no forum on the 29th, therefore there is no meeting.
So I guess I'll carry on.
Absolutely.
So talking about the information, in the first point there, I wanted to talk about the satellite concept, is what everything is put around. Okay, so
The choice is satellite.
Yeah, and we can actually maybe, just for everybody's, you know, you could do the little loop and the little circle in the middle with the 4 circles around with the little connectors, kind of like we started from the beginning when the concept was explained. Okay. And then I'm thinking after that point, I think that's good there, satellite, and then the next one would be transportation. And then below that would be tuition amounts and partial versus full, which we've said we're going to pay partial, I believe is what we agreed to. Okay, I guess, does anybody have, and then obviously on the back end of all this, we'd have a question and answer session with the public. So I'd like to ask other board members and Dr. Littlefield if he sees anything in there that you might think was important that we haven't bulleted on those items right there, or that you think would be important for information.
I think when we discuss, you know, choices or the schools, that we also include the fact that some will be tuition agreements and the others will be MOUs,
yeah.
and what the differences are on that.
Sure.
That would be important information for the public. Tricia, do you see anything?
Under the first section, should we also have what the assignment for subsequent grades is going to be in addition to what it is going to be for 8th graders?
I think this year will be, I want to say, a learning process, because we'll have the data in as far as who wants to go to what schools and et cetera. So I think obviously we're going to have a process, but we may have some fine things to iron out for subsequent years. So I think we're just okay with leaving it general and talking about this year and how we're going to deal with it. And then it may change obviously a year from now subsequently. Also depending on obviously what happens in March as well. So there's a couple of different factors moving there.
I did have a couple questions from public about special ed students, and I do think that we should address that and how this may affect them. I think they may have a misunderstanding how that will look for them as well. So I do think that we should at least address that.
I think it's a good idea.
That might go with assignment of students, maybe.
So actually, I would like to, actually, Phil, so one of the reasons why I wanted to have an information night on this date was the fact that I thought, I guess, it would give us plenty of time in the interim to negotiate the agreements that you're in the process of negotiating, as well as us taking action on them as a board. So could you give us an idea of where that process is at, and do you think it would help you for us to give you maybe like a drop dead date, for lack of a better term, where like you could speak to the attorneys and everybody in the process and say, hey, I really need these agreements by this date, so that I can get them to my board, so we can have a non-public, review them, etc., and then you know, take any action that we need to take.
We have Pinkerton negotiations this week. finalize the proposals that we're going to put on the table. We have two MOU sessions that would be Londonderry and Bow on October 31st. And the Pembroke Academy, still waiting for their attorney to free up some time. So everything is scheduled, and I don't have a crystal ball. But I'm hoping we'd have agreements for boards action, because on the MOUs, the Bow and Londonderry and Pembroke boards have got to act on those. And with the tuition agreement, it will take action by this board and action by the Pinkerton Board of Trustees. We should have those finalized by the first week in November.
Okay, that makes sense. So could we have those, so first week in November, so could we have those agreements back, and I mean start proactively setting up a non-public meeting with our new attorney? I forget his name, the guy that we met with there,
Yeah.
someone, Soloway.
Kaplan.
Yeah, sure.
Soloway
Ed Kaplan.
Holmes.
So could we now set up a non-public with Ed, I guess sometime during the week of the 11th? Would that make sense? Because if the first week is the 4th, then we could have a non-public, give everybody a good week to review those agreements, and then take action of some sort on them on like the 19th. We have a meeting on the 19th. And that's action, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever anybody ends up doing.
So you're talking about the week of the 11th?
So us doing a non-public with our attorney, again, having the finalized agreements in hand, and that would allow us to do a non-meeting for him to explain them, and then give everybody a week to read them at home on the weekend, etc., so everybody's comfortable with all the wording, and then we could talk about them on the 19th at our meeting.
And I'm just looking at the calendar.
Yep,
Wednesday, the 13th,
yep.
we have an SAU board meeting. Do we know where it is?
And what time is that?
6:30.
I have 6.
Oh, 6. I say you board meetings are at 6.
6 to whenever?
6 to 8. But I'm wondering if that's what this board wanted to do. You might be able to schedule a non-meeting with Soloway and Hollis at 4 o'clock on the 13th,
Mm-hmm.
and then that would be followed by a SAU board meeting. Because for me, every other night that week, we're getting into these budget workshops.
Right.
Like on the 14th, we have a budget workshop at 4 o'clock. I think 4 to 8 is what you said. You could always do a non-meeting at 4,
Mm-hmm.
but you got a lot of budget work to do.
Mm-hmm.
So if it would work for you as a board, I think the 13th, assuming Ed is available,
Mm-hmm.
the 13th prior to the SAU board meeting
Mm-hmm.
might work out. As for me, I'm literally out every night those 2 weeks,
Okay.
the week of the 4th and the week of the 11th.
Because we have a SAU budget meeting, and then we have actually a school board budget meeting the next night. Do you attend that, or no?
Yes,
Yes. So could we maybe, I guess, talk about those 2 nights prior to the meeting? Are you busy, you know what I mean? Or
the 13th and the 14th?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that would be up to the board. Right now, the 14th, you have a meeting scheduled at 4 PM. That's a budget workshop
yeah.
from 4 to 7.
Mhm.
You certainly could, at 4 o'clock, meet in non-meeting status with your attorney, and we could do the budget from 6 to 9.
Well, in scheduling an attorney, is it helpful when you have 2 dates possible? Because if he's not available, if we all decide the 14th works great for us, but it's not great for him, then it's not a good night. So could we present him with both dates, and whichever one works best, we maneuver what we need to maneuver?
Yeah, sure you can. I mean, it'll just be a question of, I would present and I try and do that sooner rather than later. Hey, well, I'm gonna see him tomorrow, obviously. And if that's what your pleasure would be, and as I understand it right now, you're looking for a information night on November 25th, which is a Monday.
Correct.
Question: would you want your attorney at that information meeting to answer any questions, yes or no? I don't mean yes or no.
I think that's probably a good idea.
That could be helpful.
Yep. Especially if the legalese, the agreements, again, we can read them and interpret them and whatever, but it'd be good to have him there too.
And then you would want to take action on the 19th.
Correct.
So I would tell him, everything's going to be signed, sealed, and delivered by the 13th or 14th for a non-meeting with the board.
Correct.
Because you should have the opportunity to see the agreements, ask questions on the agreements, and have time before you take action on the agreements.
Yep.
So we would need Sullivan and Hollis on the 13th, 14th, and 25th,
Correct.
but not the night you take action on it.
Other board members, what do you guys think? I don't know.
On the night that we take action,
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that we
Okay.
would.
That we would need.
Well, I'm wondering if the night we take action on the night we have the public would make sense or both, you know what I mean? I don't know. I would imagine we would ask all the questions we want to ask him when he was presenting in a non-public, right?
Non-meeting.
In a non-meeting, I mean, yeah,
And
non-meeting.
do you have a preference of November 13th or 14th? Like if he says, oh, I'm available both?
Well, I think everybody's already made themselves available for those evenings, right? So that works.
I just think that having them available for the information meeting would be more
Beneficial.
beneficial
Okay.
on the 25th.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be Ed, or it may be Ed,
Right.
because we're working with a firm and we're working with a team. Sarah Murdo is the other part of the team.
Yep.
You've met Ed.
Yep.
You haven't met Sarah. And I normally wouldn't bring both of them down. I don't want to pay the two lawyers at once.
Mhm.
So it'd probably be Ed or Sarah, preferably Ed, because you've already met him. And so no big deals.
And once we will be able to, once they're signed and negotiations are done, we can then, it's full disclosure to the community, correct? So that it's just, the timing seems to be working out well, is what I'm getting at. If all that
Oh,
happens,
yeah, I
then on
mean,
the 25th,
Yeah,
we can share all that information with the public.
the 19th.
The 19th, well, yes, of course, because the 19th is the meeting, but I'm just referring it back to the information, the information night.
Yeah,
We have to
and
give everything, because we will have.
as a result of the 13th or the 14th, any question you have about any one of these agreements,
Mhm.
you should be able to have addressed. So that if the public were to ask you questions in between the 19th and the 25th, you should be able to address those.
Right. Yep. Based on, again, we take action on the 19th, whatever happens as a board, up, down, whatever, we'll have something to tell the public that's solid.
I guess I'd have a question now.
Mhm.
If we're going to do a parent information night on the 25th,
Mhm.
depending on what happens on the 19th, I'd like to be ready to rumble on these
Mhm.
and start giving kids a sign.
Yep.
So that the ambiguity is gone,
Mhm.
and by Christmas, our kids have a sense of what's happening, so it's not all ambiguous.
Okay.
I'm gonna need direction from the board about assignment for 8th graders. Like, I know how I would do it. So, what do we do between October 22nd tonight and November 25th, when we explain assignment of 8th graders, to come to a policy decision on what assignment of 8th graders looks like, or what transportation looks like? Special ed, I value your opinion, but you have no say.
No, and my, right, it was just to.
I'm being funny when I
Yeah,
say that.
it's just that I had a question, people asked, so not having an opinion, but
Yeah,
explaining to them,
right,
to the
the-
public what.
The team assigns, and, or this team places. So the question becomes, when are those questions going to be answered? I mean, when are there going to be policy decisions on
Mhm.
transportation, assignment policy, tuition partial versus full? I know that you have made a decision of it's going to be partial,
Right, that's in there.
and it's the difference between base tuition and the tuition of the satellite school, but you're going to have to be clear on what base tuition that is.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it Pinkerton-based tuition or is it Manchester-based tuition? Because
Mhm.
if both are adopted by the community,
Mhm.
we'll actually have 2 high schools maintained by the districts, which is not uncommon.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have to make a decision which one we charge, and we use as the base tuition.
Well, we won't know that until we have an agreement in hand and we take action on it up or down, right? So, to decide one between the other, you know what I mean?
Right, no, but on the 25th, you need to know.
Right, we will, yeah. I mean, because we'll know, like, again, the action plan we're talking about is if we have a non-meeting, we look at the agreements and stuff, and then on the 19th, we take action, we'll know that number. Then, and I mean, I don't know, it probably end up being in a similar ballpark, but again, we'll know the number, the real number.
Yeah.
As far as transportation goes, I mean, we can talk about that now. Or we can talk about it at a later time.
Well, I don't think we're ready.
Okay. Yeah, well, I know that we had asked Karen to look into some stuff, so, okay. So how about, well, do you have any updates on what we talked about, Karen?
Not complete, no.
Okay, so not complete.
I was preparing that for the next board meeting.
Okay, sure, that's cool. How about, I'm thinking about, we had talked up and down about assignment, when we've talked about like some criteria. So one aspect of this, I guess I'm thinking about is the fact that based on, we've only got ballpark numbers as far as what Pinkerton will look at, that they want assigned, I guess, to Pinkerton. And we don't know what that number is yet either. So at this point, can we back away from it a little bit and maybe say that instead of putting a criteria in place now, we talk about some dates that we'll meet in December, which you were talking about, I guess, having kids know where they're going by Christmas, but back up and talk about how we want to allow people to make choices and how that process will work.
I don't want to tell you what to do,
No, go ahead.
but let me take this opportunity. We have our next board meeting, am I right, is November 5th?
Correct. Correct.
Question, should you not make all those decisions on November 5th? Because if you meet on the 5th,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have a non-meeting with your attorney on the 13th or 14th,
Yep.
and then you take action on the whatever agreements we have,
Yep.
and then you have a information night on the 25th.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in all those dates, you have to make the decisions about those things. Should you do it on the 5th?
Correct. I think the 5th would make more sense because we actually have more board members in attendance, I guess, to speak about transportation and assignment, which are obviously issues that are near and dear to everybody. So I think it would be more fair if we put that off till the 5th.
Can we just put that in pencil
Yes.
over on the left?
Yep.
I'm concerned at this point in time that this is so complex. I don't want to drop an important issue.
Right. I agree. Well, I mean, as long as we have a process whereby we're looking at addressing stuff at certain, I guess, stop points, and we have in mind where we want to be, I think we're in good shape. So yeah, I don't want anything to fall through the cracks either, Phil.
And can we clarify on the 5th how we define base tuition? Whether it's going to be the Pinkerton tuition or the Manchester tuition?
Will we not? I'm trying to think. But we won't have a non-meeting or take action on the agreements till the 19th, right? So how will we be able to make that choice if we didn't have that information, right?
Then is that a decision that you're going to make on the 19th?
Correct.
The night you make a decision on contracts?
Because based on the action that is taken, either yay or nay on the contracts, that'll give us either one number or two numbers to work with, and we can either pick one or we'll have to take one. That makes sense?
Did anybody bring the to-do list with them?
Yes, I have to do this.
I'm just wondering if there's anything on that to-do list that,
The transportation is on our to-do list. So we need to make a decision on that on the 5th. We need to make.
Yeah, transportation on the
Make
5th,
it 5th.
assignment on the 5th, current 8th grade.
And then we need to do this on the 19th, which is our base, gonna be our base tuition. Correct?
yeah. It looks like.
Now, I have a question.
So-
I don't know
Go ahead,
if this is
Trish, I'm
the right
sorry.
place to ask it. In doing research of other schools that have more than one high school, that sometimes there is something that they refer to as a preliminary assignment request that parents submit to which school, because we have to give preliminary numbers in December of this year, and in subsequent years it's earlier. Is that something that you've ever heard of, a preliminary assignment request, or are there any other school districts in this situation where people go to different schools that we can ask? Is there, like, not an application, but some way of having a record of where kids want to go? Because if
Well-
we have, I'll just use, if we have 168 eighth graders, and where our MOUs are, we don't ever hit their max number, then we don't really, I mean, for this year, our process doesn't have to be the process for assignment if it's not an assignment issue, because we have lower numbers than we have at all of these schools. That might give us time to look more at a process for assignments, since we keep getting stuff there.
Well,
Ever heard
I'm
of that?
hoping that once you make the policy decisions, you can take a deep breath and you don't have to worry about the process. That's what you have me for. Once you've got that in place, I will implement your policies. I do see this year being different than subsequent years. It would be my hope in subsequent years that high school assignments are completed by December 1st.
Point of order, Madam Chair, what does all this discussion have to do with the purpose of this meeting? You're not talking about the forum format anymore. You haven't been for the last 10 minutes.
So, Dr. Littlefield,
Could you please answer my question?
I'm not addressing your question, Mr. Crowe.
Dave, you made yourself a member of the public. Public just can't chime in when they want
Yes, the
to.
public can call for point of order when the board is not following its own stated policy, which you are now doing.
So, Tricia, we're talking about the night and the content and format of what we're doing on the info night. So, Phil, as far as we're looking at items up there on the board that are of importance that we've talked about. So, when we, again, provide the information to the public, and then on the back side of that, we'll take questions. Since you've got the most experience with any of these issues and you're in actual negotiations, I would suggest that this information, especially where you're an educator and you know folks in the parents, you know, look at you as the educational leader of our school, have you present, once we make policy and we talk about these items, have you present them in a PowerPoint format or however you want to do it. And then on the back end, we can take questions from the public. What do you guys think about that? Cheryl, Tricia, does that make sense?
Dr. Littlefield,
If you feel
doing
comfortable,
that, but yes, that would make sense.
if you feel comfortable making a presentation, or which part?
Well, I would feel comfortable with making the presentation with myself and my staff making the presentation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, again, if someone has an expertise, like Karen has expertise in
Yeah,
whatever.
If we're talking about
works.
transportation, I'd like Karen to make that presentation. If we're talking about the assignment of special ed youngsters, I'd like Marge to make that, so that how we present ourselves to the public after you make a decision, your decision, whatever your decisions are that we implement, we've really got to give the public an administrative united front. Like, we understand what we have to do, we've got it under control, we know what we're doing, and here's what it is. So I would be glad to do that. And then the question answer session, I think really the board should facilitate that, because some questions may need to be answered by the board, and some questions may be answered by the administration.
Right.
And I think it would be the board's decision to say, you know, who you have addressed the question that's asked. And I think there are going to be public questions that are both policy questions, and then there are going to be questions that are procedural questions that are administrative.
Right.
But
Okay, so who do you foresee from your staff being at the meeting with you?
Karen and Marge. Karen and Marge,
Okay.
mostly Karen.
Okay.
We're both excited about that, I think.
I saw you doubled up on the names there, so that them and their alter ego going to the meeting, each of them, like kind of like Superman, and what's the other guy there? I don't know what his name is. Bizarro. You know what I'm talking about? I'm not a big comic book guy, but whatever. He has like alter ego. Something. I don't know. Whatever. Never mind. Okay. So again, I want everybody to look at the board there and see if there's anything that's big that we're missing from an informational standpoint. That will kind of encompass what's happening to our 8th graders next year.
I'm just gonna throw this out there. I'm just wondering if we also want to, put out there what it's gonna look like and I guess Dr. Littlefield, after we make the decisions, this may be something that you'll decide on, but when will They get to be able to visit the schools, or the schools coming here, or the students going there, that type of thing. And I know, I'm sure some parents are doing this anyways, but once you have the decision, then the school can act. Right now, parents are just acting on their own behalf and their own child's behalf. But I think it'll be important that parents know what the intent is of, once these decisions are made, how the administration is going to approach that.
And that will be on the to-do list.
So should
And
we-
I don't want to make any assumptions until November 19th. And then after that, we're going to have to deal not only with who comes here and presents, and how do we coordinate with anchor schools and satellite schools for us to visit there, and how do we bring all this to the community? Like, if Pinkerton were an anchor school, it's not only important to get parents to have the opportunity to see the campus and so forth, but it's also important for the community to see it.
Does everybody, because I had heard through the grapevine, I don't know if this is true, that I think Central already had an open house. Did they already have it, or is it not till the spring? And again, I'm just saying because right now, it's, kids are at that school.
I don't think that they've had an open house to program for next year.
Right, but they have a regular, like,
It's
open
an
house
open
night where
house
people go
for
by and check it
current
out. Okay,
students.
okay, yeah, so that's good. Okay.
So, the planning of open house either for 8th graders or the community or all students, is that something that we would wait until we had a signed agreement with our anchor school before we ask them for their availability?
I think you send the wrong message.
Right, we have to take action on stuff first,
Plan
up or down.
things before they're approved, yes.
But we could, we still can add that to the information. I think I'm hoping that we do have a lot of these decisions made
Yep.
so that it can be presented. I wouldn't want it to be
You can put that in pencil too.
pencil.
Just thinking forward,
Sure.
pencil with an eraser.
And maybe by that date, we could have some of those dates if we already have signed, like if we approve agreements on the 19th.
Visit to your anchor school or all schools.
Anchor.
That's right.
I don't really have anything else.
I'm trying to think. I think we covered most of it. So, format, so we have to, what are we looking for a time frame? How long? Phil, to put stuff out, and then also you guys, and then answer questions. How long of a time should we set aside? Hour and a half?
Could be more or less, I mean,
Just trying to think. Does that sound reasonable? To,
it's.
Probably that's-
25th, right?
right,
If we go from 6:30 to 8 or 8:30?
I think 6:30.
Go ahead. We're
I
asking our
think,
opinion.
I think 6:30 is early for
Mhm.
parents.
Okay.
We want to make it easy for them, so I'm thinking more like 7 to 8:30.
Yeah, kids' sports and stuff like that too.
Yeah. If there are younger ones, they've got them settled for the night.
And we could also inquire with both the Builders Club and the PTA to see if we could have childcare and gymnasium that night. It's been something we've kind of got scheduled in. I don't have a problem asking Mrs. Mulligan.
Where are you thinking of having this?
Cafeteria?
Holly?
Sure, I mean, it makes sense for the parents know, for the 8th grade parents and those parents. Are we gonna, Phil, do you forecast needing like any kind of media stuff, like, you know, a PowerPoint stuff? That'd be something I guess Matt would take care of if you needed help with that?
That depends. And maybe you can finalize, never mind. No, I want to stick by that rule. I don't want to assume anything until an action is taken.
Yeah.
But if we're going to have a parent information night, and something catastrophic happens with our agreements, we would not have an information night on the 25th because we wouldn't have agreements.
Mm-hmm.
So in that spirit, would it make any sense during that parent information night to have Pinkerton do a multimedia presentation? Or should that be at a different time?
I think we could back it up. I think that would be good.
Like 30 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
We don't like coming up more than one thing tonight.
I'm afraid of that. I mean, in subsequent years, I would want to space things out much better.
Or maybe you could have them leave that night open, I guess, speak to them. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I think that'd be a good idea. So make it 2 hours instead of an hour and a half. Right?
7 to 9.
Yeah.
But I would request of Pinkerton that this is not a full court press.
Mm-hmm.
This is an overview of what the school is.
Yeah.
We're not recruiting, we're presenting information.
Right. Nope. So, I think we've done about all we can do. Tricia, any thoughts? Cheryl, any thoughts?
Nope. I think I'm good.
Phil, any thoughts on the back end? No? I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Sure. Sure.
At this time, we'll have an opportunity for the public to address the Hooksett School Board.
John Liscars, 142 Hackett Hill Road, Hooksett. Leanne, Karen, and Marge, you guys get a pass tonight because you've been directed to attend this meeting. Everyone else sitting at these tables, I'm disappointed in you. Special meetings of the Hooksett School Board are exactly what they are. We said it enough times tonight. What the policy is BEB. Only business which is stated in the notice shall be transacted at the meeting. The only thing in the notice was planning for the high school public forum on October 29th. As soon as you change that, move the date, the meeting is done. Why is that important? It's important because a lot of the topics you discussed tonight in this illegal meeting, many of the public would probably like to sit in there. First of all, it wasn't posted on our website with the agenda. The only thing that was posted was a date. Again, public didn't know. All they saw is a one-liner. They figure you're going to discuss the format for the forum, no big deal. That's why there's nobody sitting in the audience tonight. We discussed a lot of things for the future of the schools. And I'm disappointed. Thank you.
I'm not Nolan, John, I'm here.
Thank you for coming, Mrs. Dembo.
Well,
David Pearl, 79 Main Street. I don't know how we can be an example for the students in the school that we're supposed to be overseeing when we put our own interest ahead of the rules that are agreed upon by this board to be followed. And when they're brought forward, no one is willing to discuss them. Mr. Liscars and I clearly stated why this meeting should have ended based on the policy and the written notice that was given. And when we brought that forward, all we got was, oh, we know you're upset. Oh, we know you don't agree. But no one here defended continuing the meeting when clearly it's in violation of the policy. So you continue on now as a board that obviously doesn't care about the policy over convenience. Because you were here, and right now 2 of you are reading your phones and not paying attention to what I want to say. Yeah, and he's writing. So let's get to the rest of it. So now you're going to have a forum on the Monday of Thanksgiving Day week, where your attendance is probably not going to be high. You're sitting here planning to take action on agreements that will change the future of Hooksett High School without ever presenting those agreements to the public, or having any forum in which we can even discuss those ideas. So this is going to be a done deal, and then you're going to dish out to the public what you've done. And if this board had any integrity and thought put into it, that might not be so bad. But to sit and watch you all just ignore the rules and continue on with your own agendas, I don't think it is a good thing at all. And I don't think you're going to get the support from the community for it. Thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.